But at that moment, I had the most intense feeling of love. It was like 10 hits of ecstasy. And I was changed. That was my first huge transformation from the superficial existence to a deep, meaningful, spiritual. I always say that now. Okay, I'm ready to
I
go. I'm ready to go to the next timeline.
yes, like when he transferred through you, he probably left a part of him in you.
100%. That permanent, it just left me with a permanent wakefulness that I still have to
Oh,
this day.
welcome to Beyond the Veil, stories of twin flames, divine union, and mystical encounters. Sit back, relax, and listen to your story today. Our guest today is Jennifer Lee Friedman. She's a life coach, meditation teacher, and Akashic record reader based in Los Angeles, and she's going to tell us the story of her dad's passing today. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, Kimber.
Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Thank you. Jennifer Lee Friedman. So my story is about the deepest spiritual experience I have had so far. And it came through my father's deathbed, literally. So I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I was 7 months pregnant, and the phone rings, and this is before cell phones. So the phone rings. I was about to walk out the door to go to my prenatal checkup, and something inside my intuition said, "Get the phone." And it just didn't even make sense that I would answer it. I answer it. It's my sister, and she said the words, "Dad is sick," and that just like threw me into this state of presence. And so, how sick? He's got, very sick. He's got cancer. Da, da, da. So she said, "You need to come home." So I go to my appointment. I get on the plane to go home, and I'm a reader. I love reading. So I'm like, okay, what's going to help me with this? Like, my dad has cancer. He's dying. At LA airport, I have never seen this store before, and I've never seen it after, but there was a spiritual bookstore in the middle of LAX. It just appeared. And I went in and I got a book on death and dying. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and wrote it. Um, and so that was just what happens when you die. And then there was another book, Dying with Dignity, how to sit with someone and allow them to die with dignity. Took those books, got on the plane, went right to the hospital. He was in New Jersey, my dad, and walked into this really like dilapidated hospital room. That the hospital was like shutting down. It was like on its last legs. It looked like it was like from The Shining. And I see my dad body like thin, and my dad was a doctor. He was a sailor. He's a strong guy. And so that was a little startling. I went into the bathroom, prepared myself. I was like, you could do this. I went back out. And at that point, from that moment on, I was just completely present. All the yoga and the meditation and all the spiritual practices that I had done, I felt like prepared me for this moment. And my family's kind of freaking out around me, and I was just present. And so everything from that moment, I remember I stayed the whole night. My two brothers and I stayed. My mom went home, and there was a dog barking at like 3 a.m. And normally that would bug the crap out of me. But this was at that moment, I'm like, this is just part of the movie. It's all good. And it's what's interesting is now I look back and that dog like anchors me to my dad, like that barking, because that takes me back to that moment where I was got to sit with my dad. And so again, as I said, the room was like dilapidated. So I was like, we need to move him. He's dying with dignity. And so talk to the nurses. We move him to another room. I said, get his favorite music. At the time, we listened to Willie Nelson
Oh,
I know and my dad I didn't even knew my dad liked Willie Nelson, but he has a 1940s cover album of all these 1940 songs. And so we brought that into the room, got my dad's sailing cap, put it on him. My dad was like in and out. He was on morphine at this point, and he was in and out. He did touch my belly, and I know that he connected with my daughter. Like he just like took that in and connected with her on such a deep level. And I was massaging my dad's calves because he was, as I said, he was a surgeon. And so he always like he would come home and like he massaged my legs. He was always ask us, and we would get so annoyed. You know, those things that you get annoyed when your loved ones ask you to do. And now on his deathbed, I'm like, I'm massaging your calves like that. You need your calves massaged. So I'm massaging his calves. I I just want to say also he had worked at this hospital like years before, so he had colleagues there. And it was really interesting because they would walk into the room like ready to like their head down and like so sorry. And because the energy was so uplifting in the room and the music was playing and we were telling stories about my dad and laughing, they were like, wow, okay, this is so filled with love. Like this is different than we thought. So anyway, I'm eating a turkey sandwich in one hand, massaging his calves with my other hand, and his body's shutting down. And you know, there's different stages when the body shuts down, but it's hard to tell, right? When they die, it's not like in the movies, like they take this big breath. Um, and I knew though, I said he's gone. His soul just left. It's leaving. I feel it. And everyone, I remember my brother was like, no, no, no. I said, get the nurse, get the nurse. The nurse came. Yes, right. He's gone. But at that moment, I had the most intense feeling of love. It was like 10 hits of ecstasy, uh, very pure, just love and tingles and expansion. And at that moment, my dad's voice came into my head. And we had a very deep relationship, and he loved Buddhism, and we would always talk about spiritual texts. And he said, this is the death experience. This is what transformation feels like. And I can't give this to you forever, but here you're going to experience this. And I did. I remember looking around at everyone saying, can you feel it? Can you feel it? And they were grieving and not really feeling it. And I was like, this is incredible. Um, and a couple of realizations came up. I knew like, okay, that there was just his body. I was looking at just a shell, right? His soul was gone. So I was looking at a shell. And then it stayed with me for 6 weeks. And I, as I stated earlier, I was living in LA at the time. I ended up staying in New Jersey for 2 months just to help my mom and be with my family. And I just remember times like he came through, looking through me, looking at my mom and looking through me. And it just was so wild. And the beautiful thing that came out of it is my whole family became more spiritual and because of this experience. Because I was like, look at the lights, like we could see him trying to communicate. And even the ones that were like so opposed to it and would never believe this stuff, they couldn't deny certain things that were happening around us. So, and that permanent, it just left me with a permanent wakefulness that I still have to this
oh,
day.
that's so incredible. Was your mom open to him looking through your eyes at her?
I love that you asked about my mom because she's the one who is most analytical and um, not into spirituality, wouldn't even go to a therapist, growing up. And she, yes, has definitely was open to it and has been more open to it. And even says now, I feel him sometimes, I feel him there. And if you know my mom, for my mom to say that is remarkable.
That's so incredible. When you were in the room and he was passing, did you feel other spirits? Did you feel angelic energy, or was it just mostly his energy?
I think, I was so overwhelmed with this feeling of
Yeah.
expansion of, so you know, now I would say, yeah, it's not just him. It was a group of spirits for sure.
I love
And it was like, yeah, it was definitely a group of spirits and just this incredible, expansive feeling.
so cool. When your daughter was born, did she have a connection to him?
So she did. I remember one time in the playroom, I walked in when she was probably 2 or 3, and I said, "Who are you talking to?" And she said, "I'm talking to Grandpa."
Oh, wow.
By the way, she doesn't, now she's a teenager, so she's kind of close to it. But when she was younger, many times she would say that he came to play with her and watch her.
Oh, I love that. I notice that a lot if someone passes and then that baby, that child still has the connection to the grandparent, which is so profound. Um, when the feeling wore off, like after the 6 weeks, like what did you feel? Because I know it's always kind of a calm down when you're in this high and this enlightened state, and you're like, oh my God, I'm enlightened. And then all of a sudden you drop down back to the 3D.
I was like, hi, being forever. Yeah, it just was it did feel like a come down for sure. But as opposed to, feeling like I'm on ecstasy and a drug, it was way more pure than any drug you could ever take. And the come down wasn't as crashing. And for sure, there was a permanent peace that remained. But as you said, yes, it's not as, it wasn't as profound as that. And I find myself now like having more like little transformations where it gets big again. And
Mhm.
and just watching that mind, because when the mind comes in and that ego comes in, it it it's covering, I don't know what word to use, but that permanent peace, I can't feel it as much. So my practice is, having a practice where I am connecting to that peace daily, every morning, and for sure throughout the day.
Yeah, I totally understand that because it is this dance back and forth between the spiritual and the ego and trying to figure out how to navigate that that dance of reality. And do you find yourself seeking or searching or looking for that feeling again?
It's funny because yeah, after it happened, I definitely was like, I gotta get that feeling back again, and praying for like transformation. And now I know what to do. I know the practices, so I'm not just searching for this elusive thing. I know what helps, and I know what brings me back to that connection. So I have,
I love
my
that.
own practice that does that. Yeah.
Is it just regular meditation practice
Uh,
or
it's meditation. So I have my morning ritual is so important. Before, it used to be I'd wake up, go to my phone, and start scrolling. And now it's like just doing these different mindfulness techniques in the morning
Mhm.
before I get out of bed, meditating before I get out of bed. I know some people don't like to meditate in bed. I do. I don't fall asleep. I'm able to meditate. And then even brushing my teeth, being in front of the mirror, taking 10 seconds before I go to the next segment, taking that time to ground myself. And then also, I have a morning prayer that I say. I open my bathroom door and I open my arms, and I have a prayer that I recite every morning. And that just starts my day off. And then throughout the day, it's catching myself when my ego voice, I like to call them the various saboteurs, come into play. My controller, my stickler, my hyper vigilant, saboteur comes in. I'm getting really good, and it's a practice of catching them before they take over, and accepting them, changing it into a gift if possible, and that's the practice that I follow that really helps. And it's so exciting when it's like, there you are. when
Yeah,
you,
I
when you
love
find the
that.
peace again, there you are. Yay.
Totally. I love that. And I love that you say you meditate in bed because I do as well. I do before I go to sleep and when I wake up. And I like it. I like being in that nourishing energy. And yeah, I
I
love
agree. Oh, I love that you do too. Yay. I love
that.
that. Yeah. A lot
So
of
good.
people fall asleep and it doesn't,
Yeah.
that's the other thing, finding what works for you. That's not a one size fits all, right? Like what works
Right.
for you. Yeah.
100%. You told me before the call that you had an initial spiritual awakening. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I did. Yes. So when I was 19 years old, I had been stuck in a relationship. And even before that, I was living a very superficial life. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to do the drugs. The popular kids in my school, unfortunately, were the druggies. So I did the drugs. It was all about what you look like and the clothes you're wearing and going to the right club. And uh, my boyfriend broke up with me. He was about 10 years older than me, and he was so wrong for me, like on so many levels. But you get sucked in and you're like, I'm gonna marry him. And he broke up with me. I also was going to a college that I didn't really want to go to. My life, nothing was authentic and happening on purpose for me. It just So he broke up with me. I laid in bed for a week figuring out how I was going to take my life.
Hmm.
And I was like, I could take pills, I could do this, and I was bad. I was bad and could not get out of bed. And through that psychological turmoil, I had my first huge awakening. And the next morning I woke up and I felt like I was born again. It sounds so corny, but it's the first thing that came to me is like, I'm born again. I understand what they mean. Like when people say I'm born again. And I could hear the birds chirping outside. The smells of my mom cooking in the kitchen came in and just smelled better than I've ever smelled it. Uh, Walking outside, the music, I would put music on in the car and I could hear every lyric. I just felt energized, uplifted, expansive. And at that moment, I knew that I wanted to move to New York City. I was going to get into acting class because I had talked about being an actress for so long. I dropped out of college, which was like huge. Nobody dropped out of college in my family. And I was changed. That was my first huge transformation from the superficial existence to a deep, meaningful, spiritual
Wow. What do you think
existence.
happened in that deep, dark night of the soul? Did you feel something come over you? Was it a download?
It's interesting because I really wish, I know Eckhart Tolle has a similar story and he really goes into every aspect of it. And I wish I could remember, like, I just think I woke up the next day and it was like, whoa, it just happened while I slept. And I've researched a little bit. Steve Taylor has written many books on awakening. And I've learned that awakening through psychological turmoil is the most common uh, way of awakening. So that I was like, okay, that makes sense. I think my ego dissolved and it just all this stuff like the onion was just kind of like ripped off. The onion, the layers were just ripped off. And I got to my true essence, just
I,
looking at that ego. And through so much suffering, I feel like there was just this surrender that just took over.
I love that. I often call it like the archetypal path of the goddess too. It's like going down the seven gates of hell, like Inanna or Ishtar, and that full dissolving, the madness that happens. Like Carolyn Mace
Yeah,
calls it spiritual madness, where it's not really psychological turmoil. It's a spiritual madness that dissolves the ego to deconstruct who you think you are in order for you to resurrect your higher self and
I
resurrect
love that.
the truth of who you are. And I love that because I do think that from what I'm seeing, that week in bed and that dissolving, it was like you had to completely dissolve and break down in order for that new part of you to be reborn. And
Yes.
then you're in a new timeline and looking at everything new. Just so cool.
And it's interesting because the one thing I do remember is that I realized that I could not die by suicide. There was something in me that's like I can't do that to my parents, and I know that's I've worked with clients who are suicidal, and I know that's very different. And I'm not. Sometimes people are so taken over by it that you're not rationally thinking.
Mm-hmm.
right? When people die by suicide. But I know, and I don't know if that had something to do with it. I was like, well, I can't do that. It's like that's not an option now. Like I thought that was an option and that felt good, but that's not an option. So I think maybe at that point, it's like when the ego just dissolved. It's like, well, here you go. Because if that's not an option, then the only way is here, is through, right? Is
Right.
this way.
Right. Do you feel like after that you had new spiritual gifts or you had new insight to reality?
100%. I mean, I've always been told by psychics and mediums that I have a gift. I've always been told that, and I'm like, okay. And it really came out of that. I just felt like I could connect with people, and things came to me, information came to me more easily, and I I really, you know what it felt like, Kimber, is like the shackles were taken off because I felt like so inauthentic and the shackles that it was like, I just remember feeling like this is what freedom is. I don't have to be a certain way. I don't have to like, because I got in a lot of trouble in high school. And now my new persona was I was going to be the good girl. And so I took on that. And I was like, I don't have to be the good girl. I could speak my mind. I can say, like, it was such a freedom, a feeling of freedom and
I love that.
upliftment.
When you came out of that and was basically a new person, did you lose friends and
It's interesting. Oh, you asked such good questions. It's interesting because I did, because I was in a, but I don't know, like I did, yes. Because I was thrown into a whole new world of New York actors. So I 100% lost friends. Yes.
wow. Wow.
I just didn't have, I was in a new world and I was commuting to New York and then I moved into New York and it just was a natural thing. I guess it didn't feel like, oh my God, I'm losing my friends. It just was a natural,
That makes sense.
um, yeah, a natural transition. And it did feel like, okay, I jumped a timeline. And I love that you say that. You mentioned the timeline because I got that term from you, I think. And I always say that now. Okay, I'm ready to
I
go. I'm ready to go to the next timeline.
Yes, I love that. Do you think your dad's interest in Buddhism and spiritual texts helped you transition and navigate this realm of coming
Yes.
into the new awareness?
Yes, definitely. And I feel, and I've heard people say this too, and I definitely feel this, that when loved ones pass, sometimes you have information that you didn't know before. Like he was a brain surgeon, and I'm so fascinated with neuroscience now and understanding the brain. And also, this is like a weird one. He put Tabasco sauce. My dad grew up in the projects of Newark. And so he has like really bad eating habits because they just were kind of basically we're just happy they were having anything. He had banana sandwiches or spaghetti and ketchup. But the one thing he did is he put Tabasco in everything. Growing up, there was Tabasco there, and I would try it like a little dab of it, and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, how can you eat this?" It would burn my mouth. When my dad passed, I could take a whole bottle of Tabasco sauce. It's never enough. Like spice, I took on his spice addiction, and I love
Wild.
spicy food. Yeah.
It reminds me of people when they get heart transplants and suddenly they're craving Mexican food because they have someone that loved Mexican food's heart. Like when he transferred through you, he probably left a part of him in you, don't you think?
100%. I feel him so much. I mean, I communicate with him still, but yes, he definitely
I love
left
that.
that. And I find myself like sometimes I'll be skiing. I'm like, hey dad, check it out. Like feel
That's
this with me. Yeah.
when was this? How long ago was his passing?
He passed. My daughter just turned 18. So yeah. I mean, I was
Wow.
7 months pregnant with her.
Wow.
Yeah. And he died on St. Patrick's Day. And he was part Irish.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's magical. So there's always a celebration on that day.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, so cool. I
And my
love that.
dad, my brother's doing a documentary on his life too now. So it just got done. The documentary's done. It's going to air in first screening will be in New York City, and then it'll be in Los Angeles. Called Lucky Jack.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love that. What's it about?
it's about his. It really is about the American dream, keeping your dream. Because he grew up in the projects. You know, failed out of high school, but he always had a dream of being a doctor. And only at the age of 30, with 3 kids, he decided he wanted to be a doctor. He was working as an insurance agent, making a lot of money. And but my mom supported him. It was tough. We did not have a lot of money for a lot of years, and he ended up becoming a doctor. And so it's really about that, the keeping your American dream, and just keeping the dream alive. And we've kind of lost that in our country, and we're very divided. And so it's sort of like my brother really wanted to uplift the country and just like, you could do it, whatever you want. Like, don't think your dreams have passed you.
Oh, I love that. It's so funny you said that. I was just thinking that this morning about the American dream and how it's people don't have that dream anymore of what you can do in this country. And that's
Oh,
amazing your brother's doing that.
I love
So
that.
good. We would love to come when it premieres in LA. That would
Yes,
be
I will.
amazing.
Absolutely. It's premiering in New York in October, and I think November, December in LA. I'll definitely tell you about it.
Amazing. So good. So, do you have any last advice, things to say people losing a parent, like what to expect, how to prepare yourself, how to navigate that difficult transition, especially people our age that are starting to lose their parents?
Mm. I'd say an important thing I would say, and what helped me with it, is that I know that I told my dad I loved him, and I know that our relationship was solid. And I would say, make sure that relationship, you're saying I love you, tie up any issues, because it was harder for some other family members because they didn't get to say that all the time to my dad, and so it was a little bit harder for them to process. And just appreciate the moments, like be with them, hang out with your parents, and really take it in and really be with them, not distracted on your phone. Um, and everyone's going to die. We're all going to die. So
Hmm.
it's inevitable, but I think if you appreciate your time with them and you know that they know you love them, I think that goes a long way.
Oh, I love that. If anyone wants to contact you, do you have a website, social media?
I do. My website is Jennifer-Leigh.com. And they
Amazing.
could they could reach out to me through that.
So good. Well, it's been such a pleasure, and I love your story so much. And I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Kimber. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so
Thank,
much. And thanks
thank
for
you.
doing
Thank
this.
you. Thank you for watching Beyond the Veil. Please like, subscribe, and share so we can grow our channel. If you have a story you would like to share, please email nandipresents@gmail.com. If you're interested in classes or personal sessions, please visit nandi.co, Nandi.co, and have a magical day.